All right, hello, hello. I know we're getting to the end of the day. Who's excited? Woo, we're almost done. All right. So, the question I had up here for people to think about was think of a leader who made you feel truly heard and what did they do differently? And honestly, I don't know that I even need to do this presentation because a lot of people filled out the poll and everyone had the right answer. So, congratulations, you all succeeded. Just kidding. All right. So, I'm going to talk to you about leading with empathy. You might be wondering who am I and why am I talking? Um, so I work for a company that, whether we like it or not, likes to do reorgs a lot. Like I think I've experienced 3 in the last year. So the idea of dealing with change and dealing with empathy is something that's close to my heart. I think we've heard it a couple times. I like to talk about how we need to see the people as people, not as numbers. So you might see a trend in my talk. But why am I here today? Well, I want to talk to you about a couple of things. So first, I want to talk about trust. Has anybody heard Brené Brown talk about the trust, the marble jar? It changed how I look at things. And she basically just talks about how her daughter was talking about how one person she didn't trust or didn't want to share her stories with. And the other person she did. And she said, well, why do you want to share with this friend? She goes, well, she saved a spot at lunch for me. That's a marble in the jar. She made room for me on the bus, a marble in the jar. And all of the experiences that her daughter talked about were not the major ones. They were the little things every day that the friend showed up every day. And what I want you to take from this is it's about trusting and it's about building that trust. So, lest we think that it's not about building trust, leadership trust is the highest ranked motivator of employee engagement, meaning 77% of employees cite it as the most important factor. Now, I will say diversity comes up on that list very often as well, but trust and the fact that you can trust the people you work with and the people that lead you is very important. So you're sitting here saying, um, what is leadership trust? So leadership trust fosters open communication, boosts engagement and ownership, which I think is a big one. It drives collaboration and innovation. We all want that, right? We want to drive that collaboration, innovation. Navigates change effectively. So I just told you we had 3 reorgs and like, that I can count in the last year. Let's see, and improves performance. Well, that's interesting. So if they trust their leaders, we see better performance and builds loyalty and belonging. So I don't know. Well, just kind of think to yourself if you have a leader that you work for that you trust, are you more likely to stay or leave, right? So you might be sitting here saying, well, we're talking about empathy. Why are we talking about trust? I thought we were talking about empathy. Well, if you look at the building blocks of trust in leadership, there are a few. So authenticity, transparency, communication, integrity, competence, consistency, empathy, decision making, accountability, and vision. So today we're going to focus on empathy, but obviously it's not the only thing that you need to do in order to build trust. So the first thing I want to talk about is what is empathy? Because oftentimes I think we have the wrong definition in our minds. So empathy is the ability to perceive and relate to the thoughts, emotions, and lived experiences of others. What I want to point out here is it's not about knowing how they feel or having experienced what they're experiencing. It's not about taking it on. So, as an example, when you hear about somebody going through a hurricane, because I live in Houston, hurricanes are a thing, whether I like it or not. So, empathy is understanding what they might be going through. What oftentimes we think of empathy is, oh, we're going to take it on that burden of what they might be going through and feel it for ourselves. And that's not the same thing. Okay? And we'll get to why. That's really important. So sympathy, the feelings of pity for another person without really understanding what it's like to be in their situation. Well, that's interesting because a lot of times you hear empathy and sympathy in the same in the same phrase, right? It's not the same thing. Empathy being the capability or ability to imagine oneself in the situation of another, experiencing the emotions, ideas, or opinions of that person. Imagine how different it is if you understand what those people who report to you are dealing with on an everyday basis, and you can feel that, okay, I understand why they're coming to me and saying this is what we need to change, right? Versus not being able to understand and just saying, I pity you because you don't have enough to make it in management. See, big difference, right? So the empathy is understanding that. And I want to spend a moment talking about this because someone who reviewed my presentation was like, oh, you need to talk about how you can just create fatigue because you're too empathetic. Well, so I went down the rabbit hole. Like, is that really true? Because I'm in trouble. No. It actually says some studies say that empathy leads to burnout. However, the new analysis says it's the type of empathy that matters, which is why it's important to understand that. And the exception seems to be when the leader uses emotional resonance, meaning we're taking on or mirroring the distress of others. So directing attention towards others can reduce anxiety and physiological stress responses. So the key there is instead of focusing, and this is common sense to most people in the room here, instead of focusing on ourselves and what we get out of being a leader or what we get out of the team succeeding, we focus on our team and what they get out of succeeding, right? Because that benefits all of us. So the key there is don't take it on for yourself and think about it from that perspective. So why is empathy important in complex environments? So our company likes to buy a whole lot of other companies, and everyone sits there and wonders, what is going on? How do we incorporate that? Well, again, we have to stay grounded when navigating ambiguity and competing priorities. That makes sense. And if we build that trust with our team, then when they come to us and say, what does this mean for me? I don't know right now. Give it some time. It'll all figure itself out. I got your back, right? It enables leaders to hear, value, and act on diverse perspectives, which aligns directly with the talk earlier. So I'm not going to do this right now because we're going to run out of time because I talk a lot. But the thought process I want you to take and think about is, where is empathy hardest for you to practice at work? And I think it's interesting because we've had this conversation a few times. I've worked both in male-dominated and women-dominated departments. And there are times where it was easier to work in the male-dominated departments than the women-dominated departments, and the opposite way. I've experienced it both ways. And I think we're going to start seeing very quickly a need for us to use empathy with my kids' generation and their kids' generation, right? And so this understanding of it's a different world now is true. So what have we learned so far? We learned that trust is built on intentional action, right? We learned that trust creates the results we want. We learned that empathy is not the same as sympathy, and empathy does not require agreement. Together, those principles form the leadership framework that keeps team resilience when it matters most. So how do we put this into practice? So invest before the crisis. I think one of the bigger problems we have is we have a tendency to wait until the shoe falls or, the milkshake falls on the ground to react to the emergency. But we have to build those relationships when everything is calm so that when chaos hits, they know who to trust and they know how to show up, right? Otherwise, they're still questioning whether you have anything to offer. Do I trust this person? Do I take their side or their side? Who do I trust the most, right? I don't want them questioning that when everything starts going crazy and they start hearing rumors of another reorg, right? I want them coming to me and saying, hey, what is this about? What do you know, right? And not being concerned because they know I've got your back, right? So check in regularly. So this was a great example of a person who was talking about, his name is Sean Barnes. Look him up. He's a great guy. He was talking about, how do I build trust in this department where I don't have the same level of knowledge? And you'd have to go back and read the post, but the point of it was, he said he walked into this room with this guy he was not connecting with over and over and over. He walked into his office and saw a lightsaber on the wall. And he goes, oh, is that a lightsaber? Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so then he was able to connect with the guy. And after that, he was able to build that trust because he found a way to connect with them, right? And so that is the point of, hey, how do I do this? Well, I build that now. And he said, when I built that now, I put that energy into it now, then that engineer later, when the crisis strikes and I got to fix a problem, he's not sitting there going, oh, I told them this was going to happen, right? He's actually like, okay, I'm ready. I trust you. Let's get it done, right? So you'll notice in that example too, is he had to find a way to get to know that person that he didn't agree with, right? So earning trust in the small moments, because they add up faster than you think. Think about that marble jar, right? Every time a marble hits. Practice active listening. I think we heard that a couple times today. Be transparent about what you can share and honest about what you can't. Create inclusive decision-making processes and communicate them. It's not about me. I'm not the best part of the team, right? My director is not the best part of the team. It's the team as a whole, right? And so we have to make sure we communicate that and we open that up. And then be the change, model adaptability, transparency, and grace under pressure. Because when we don't, well, here's the old adage, when there's one finger pointing at you, how many are pointing back at you? There's three, right? So if I'm pointing the finger, how dare you? I'm not actually helping the situation, right? If I'm looking for the blame and not solving the problem, I'm not actually helping. So let's talk about teamwork and how we do that. So we balance empathy with business objectives, knowing that those are not opposites. You can meet business objectives and still have empathy for your team, which is an interesting thought. Communicate the why in their language, help people see themselves in the solution. So that I could talk about this till I'm blue in the face. But when you are at a level, director and above, and you are talking about why it matters to an employee, and they are an hourly employee, your reasons of why it matters to them and their reasons on why it matters to them are two different things, unless you've taken the time to understand where they're coming from. And that's important. A lot of times we do this in software. We don't do this very well. We don't talk about it. And the question I always have is, what do they get out of it? You're throwing the software at them. What are they going to get out of it? And they look at you like, well, we're going to get better finance reporting. Uh-huh. Nobody cares. What are they going to get out of it? Why are they going to use it, right? So understanding that empathy piece plays a role in that as well. Know your limits. You can't be everything to everyone. This is important because I think we all have a tendency to kind of just grab everybody and you're on my team. You're on my team. How can I help you be successful? Remember, you have to balance that. You can't be that for everybody. So I want you to think about, what will I do? If you were completing the sentence this week, I will build more trust with my team by, do you have any ideas in your head of what you might do? So think on that for a minute. And then one thing I can do tomorrow to lead with more empathy is to stop, fill in the blank, start, and continue, right? So there's things you're doing right. There's things that you might want to change. Now, I got a little radical idea for you. This is the fun part, okay? If you see, I don't know if you can see it back there, but there is a monkey on the top of the giraffe, right? And he didn't ask for permission, right? He was like, "Ooh, I see this lion. I'm going to get on top of the monkey. He's taller. That's good. We're good," right? So the monkey didn't ask for permission to climb. The giraffe doesn't require the monkey to earn the view. That's an interesting piece, right? And so they simply recognize what the other needs and act. So what I like about this idea, the giraffe has a little bit different perspective. It might come from experience. It might come from position, but generally comes from experience. And we often think that we, because of our department, because of our title, that we've proven we have something to offer. But what the giraffe says is, well, my experience says this: the monkey is vulnerable, but it's not weakness. It's just an opening, right? Oh, I can connect with the giraffe. That'll be great. Now we can walk together through the jungle, right? Sorry about that. All right. And so the herd survival. So this was interesting. I was researching giraffes, and it says the herd survival is based on wisdom, and it lives with those who built the deepest relationships. Isn't that interesting? So even in the jungle, they've done that. So the giraffe doesn't try to be the monkey, nor does he try to be the lion. The giraffe uses his or her height, strength, and social bonds to survive. Huh. So the other part that was interesting was giraffes that have a tight social bond have measurably higher survival rates than lone strength. So a single giraffe out there in the wild, not doing so great. It's okay. It can do some stuff. It can see a lot, right? But it's on its own. So, how to be a giraffe? Anyone want to be a giraffe? I want to be a giraffe. And I totally wanted to buy a bunch of stuffed giraffes just for this, but sorry. So, giraffe is the G is for gentle and resilient. Balance kindness with backbone. Stay steady through bumps while keeping your edges soft. And I love that thought process of, hey, everyone's dealing with problems, everyone's dealing with crises. How do we deal with that in a way where we show up in the right headspace? And we're there and we've built that empathy to understand what our employees are dealing with. And so now we can say, okay, let's fix that. So include perspectives. That's your I, include perspectives, which means consider every point of view. Your vantage point may be clearer, but it isn't the only point of view. So I may be at the top. I may be the giraffe and I can see all the way, but there's trees in my way. So maybe the monkey's the right person to tell me what's ahead, right? So understanding that there might be another point of view that's better. Reach higher, stretch for impact and growth, and stay aware of where your team is at. And then aim high, stay humble. Stand tall and confident in any situation without ego. Oh, that one can be a little bit tough, right? But I like that this idea of standing tall and owning the fact that I can be the giraffe and I can be there for the monkey. And of course, F is fill the trust jar. Prioritize your team and earn trust one marble at a time. Fuel yourself. How many heard that last day? Fuel yourself. Don't leave yourself behind. Practice self-care. Show yourself empathy. I can guarantee okay. Who here has felt guilt of being a wife and a working person? Yeah. And how many times do we not give ourselves empathy or grace? All the time. So that's important for us. And then empathize to elevate, understand before being understood, lifting both people and outcomes. Now, I use that kind of thought process when I talk about diversity and inclusion at my work because we have multiple software platforms with multiple developers who have worked on their software platforms since they came out of college, probably. And that little software program that they've been working with, they're very, very proud of, right? It does so many good things. It is the right tool for the right thing. And you put two developers who worked on two different programs in the same room, and they will fight about which one's the right one. And so I talk about inherent bias is, well, that person doesn't agree with me, so clearly I don't like them. And now we can't work as a team because they just decided they don't like each other. And so my point is take a minute, ask why. Why is your software better? In what situation is your software better, right? Then we can start empathize to elevate. So what I would like for you to do when you leave today is to think about being the giraffe others want to follow and know they can trust when threatened. That's it. So I do have some references there, and of course, you can always connect with me. I hope that was interesting for you. I think we have 5 more minutes for questions. If no one wants to bring some up, there were some in the app. Any questions? All right. Let me pull this up real quick. All right. So one of the questions that was asked was, what metrics do you use to measure success? And it was an interesting question because I think it depends on the situation. For me, the metric is when everything hits the fan, are they prepared? Do they have what they need? Do they know what to do? Which is a hard metric to really put a number on. But I also read, well, I also agree with the ones that said, well, it's about whether people stay, whether you're promoting within, whether they're moving to other positions because they grew and now they need to go somewhere else. Those are great metrics for the fact that they were fed while they were with us and then they went off to go spread the message to somewhere else, right? Whereas if they're leaving the manager, leaving the leader, that's not necessarily a good sign, right? So that's important. Yes. Yes. Right. You can't. Right. Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. Sure. Oh yeah, and it affects everybody, not just the person being laid off. And so I think part of that is I know it feels bad. It is bad. It's acknowledging that they're gonna be irritated and grumpy and it's giving them grace in a time where they're still trying to figure things out. And I think that's important because we have to acknowledge how it stinks. Like it's just, I wish we didn't have to let anybody go ever, right? And I've watched people who worked 40 years out at a government site be walked off site and like that close to retirement, right? And I think too, then you turn it into a lesson of, okay, well, one, so if I know something's happening soon and I can't tell them, but I know that let's say we're going to do a transition to something else. I might start a training like, hey, let's start this training as a team, or let's have a conversation about, AI. If it was right now, I'd have a conversation about AI. What are you guys doing for training in AI? What's working for you? And I would start having that team conversation just because I always want them to push. I don't want them to push just because something's coming. But I want them to always have a goal and to never sit there and go, well, I'm going to retire in, a year. So why do I care? No, you still got to last that year and you want to get that retirement right. So let's keep going, right? And I think that's important. And also understanding that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You're not going to save everybody, and that's not your goal. It's not your job to save them, but you can give them the tools to be successful and then say, okay, well, the other thing you could do is if you know they're better they'd be better in a different role, you can always suggest, like, did you see this role is open? Maybe you should apply. But yes. So I mean, you can do it in creative ways, but that thought process of, hey, maybe you want to consider, um, or hey, I have a friend who's hiring at another company. I'm just kidding. But it's understanding that that's what they're dealing with. So like at Chevron, every 2 years, everyone has to reapply for their jobs or apply for a new job. And they actually encourage you not to reapply for your job, but to apply for a new one. So for like 6 months, you just got to acknowledge the fact that everyone is looking and nobody's paying attention. Like, but that's the kind of the point. Like in that situation, that's what's happening, and so that's how you bring that empathy and the understanding of what they're dealing with. I'll leave with one thing because we're almost done. This one person who's no longer with our company um, said something that has changed how I work, and it is she starts every meeting with asking her teammates, "Are you in a good headspace to deal with what we need to deal with today or to meet today?" And that's the thought process of that's an empathetic way of starting a meeting that takes a little while to get people used to, but helps them to see that you actually do care. And it also helps you because once they get in that habit of telling you, yes, I'm good, let's go forward with this, or no, you now have an idea of what they're dealing with. You don't know the details. They could be like, okay, maybe let's talk about this tomorrow, right? If it's not something urgent, let's wait, right? One example she used was her employee was putting her grandfather in a nursing home. Obviously not in a great headspace to be here in the moment. Do I want her here? Yes. Do I want her to be fully in the moment? Yes. So let's table that for now. We'll talk about it tomorrow, right? Or next week. And so that's the point of being empathetic is what are my people dealing with? And how do I help them in their situations while also acknowledging the view I have, right? So hopefully that helps. Thank you.